Tac, for the first time in the history of this series, we don't have a berhalter roster to project or to talk about. It is Pochettino's 2026 World Cup roster. How good does that feel to say?
I think we had one episode in between Berhalter's domestic violence case and getting rehired. There was like one right there that I think we did without him. There was one.
That's true. We weren't sure Berhalter was gonna. Now at least we're sure he's not going to be back, right?
No, he's going to Chicago.
Yeah, and ironically, he could win the World Cup in Chicago, as that one reporter asked Bastian Schweinsteiger if there's ever a chance. So maybe Berhalter's going to be like, he's going to come and say, we want to change the way Lake Michigan sees American soccer.
Or and just like across the pond, just kind of like the way Buffalo sees it.
Buffalo is like far from Chicago.
Well, you got to go across the lakes, right?
That's a long way across the. Is Buffalo close to one of the lakes?
Buffalo was close to those big ass lakes. I would have to check here on the map. Sorry guys if my geography ain't perfect. I did go to school in Buffalo, but I've never been to Chicago in my life. So
Chicago's a great city, especially in the summer.
Actually, no. Chicago's it's like Michigan, and then there's like
you got
Canada. Like
Ohio.
Buffalo has like Ohio.
You got Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Maryland. Well, Maryland's below, but you got a lot of states between Chicago and Buffalo. But all that to say, Chicago Fire fans, I tweeted out this morning, I don't think there's a better fit, that two entities could possibly be a better fit than the Chicago Fire and Gregg Berhalter. The absolute love for mediocrity and underachievement is, I think it's a great fit. I think they'll be very happy together, those two entities.
It's funny how Berhalter and all of his assistants get job in MLS very easily, right? But But this episode ain't about Berhalter. Let's get rid of it.
This is Pochettino's 2026 World Cup roster. And so we're going to go back. The last time we did this was May. So this was before Copa, before the Olympics, before the, all the drama that the last 4.5 months has been. And we're going to have to talk about possible changes, maybe what we think Pochettino is going to do. I've been watching a lot of the Pochettino interviews to try to figure out if he's giving us any hints or clues. I will say one that I did listen to. I think it was with Raj. I don't remember. But he said something, because, there's a thing of if you're not playing in Europe, are you going to play for Poch? And he said this. He said, maybe even sometimes you are not play for your club, but here is different. We can possibilities. So he didn't really say, I'll call you up anyways. But I have a feeling that with Poch, what you do in the national team is going to mean a lot more than what you do with your club. So if Gio Reyna isn't playing for his club, but he's balling out for the national team, I still think he's getting called up.
I guess the club would be the way you enter the national team, right? That's how you open the door. You have to, unless you're really good, you have to be playing for your club to show that you can get that chance. But you have to take care of it. Otherwise,
I think what you do in camp, if you're not giving a high intensity, in training, or you're not giving, if he senses that your focus is not there in camp, I think that's going to mean a lot more to Poch than whether or not your specific club is playing you that month or not. But we'll see. We'll see what he does. There's a lot of speculation because we just don't know,
Yeah. And we're going to start getting so this is what's good about this video now. We're going to project into the future, completely clueless of what to expect about Pochettino. After October,
it's going to take a while to get used to not saying that, huh?
Yeah, I got used to saying Berhalter's echo. But then we have October and November, 2 camps, and we'll update this video in December with some data to back what we're going to say. But we're about to speculate the living crap out of this roster.
I know, and it's 2 years from now, so it's even, it's not like who's he going to call up in October. It's like, who's he going to call up in summer of 2026? We're also, it was 23 last time we did this roster. We're going to increase it to 26-man rosters because Copa America went to 26. So I'm pretty sure World Cup's also going to be 26. So for now, we're going to go with 26-man rosters, which means we have to add 3 players on top of the changes that we're going to make. But before we go and do that, Tac, where does the game start?
I'm not going to go through that again. I'm not going through that.
You guys know in the comments and then by watching where the game starts. So thank you to Believe and that other organization that's supporting us. No, I'm still using them. let's talk about last time. So we start with goalkeepers, which inevitably is going to be the hardest, I think, to project 2 years from now. And I had two young guys, Chris Brady and Gabriel Slonina, and Matt Turner back in May. I was still, Berhalter was still in charge, so I thought he was going to ride or die with Turner, which he probably would have if he had stayed. And I was hoping that Slonina and Brady could really break through in the next 2 years. That still may happen, but I'm going to change this based on recent events. I'm going to remove both of those guys, actually.
Wait, can I ask you a question? Because I'm wearing a Manchester United jacket right now. Is it because Slonina just conceded 7 goals to Manchester United?
No, it's because his performance this season and even towards, the last season as much, people thought he was going to get a big move after that Belgium stint with Eupen.
The terrible season he had in Belgium.
He had a terrible season. People didn't watch it, right? So they just went on stats. And I watched about 70 or 80% of his games. I didn't watch the whole games. I watched him on Y-Scout by watching. And it was an amazing save followed by a shaky attempt at grabbing a cross or a terrible pass to an opponent in his own box, or just terrible passing to sometimes bad passing out of the back is not just you pass it to the opponent. It's you pass it to your man, but it's too slow and it's behind him. So it completely changes the trajectory of what he can do with the ball now, right? It hasn't changed. And people are mad that he went to Barnsley. I said Barnsley was his level. And people got mad and said, no, he hasn't even been lights out at Barnsley either.
I want to add one thing, because the problem is very often there's some media accounts that they essentially hype a player without ever watching it. More specifically, I'm going to call a name, CBS Golazzo America.
Yeah,
they did that to Richie Ledesma. I got tired of it and I called him out. They said he was being immense for PSV. And I said, listen, you guys are not watching him. He's been okay for PSV in the Eredivisie, a team that is literally dominating every opponent, not exposing the back line. And he's literally the weak link on offense when he supports. He was the weak link compared to Bakayoko, Luke de Jong, Malik Tillman, all those guys. And then when he played Juve, it was quite clear of how bad he was. It's a similar situation with Gabriel Slonina. They were one of the accounts that posted that he was doing tremendously there while not watching a single game. And again, when you do that as an account that's not seen as a troll account, it's seen as a very serious account.
They definitely pretend to be serious, yeah.
Yeah, they try to be serious. Very often, I mean, if you put clown makeup on it, I wouldn't really notice the difference. But it's just like, that's the issue. Watch the player. And I talk about this in the Abroad series every single Monday. There are a lot of players, people are like, you didn't give your opinion on this guy. It's like, yeah, because I didn't watch it. If I didn't watch, I'm not going to give you my opinion. I say that
all the time. If I didn't watch a player, I say I can't speak to it.
Yeah, and Slonina, for example, in Belgium, there's the highlights that you can point out, but you mentioned the stats. Statistically speaking, and I'm not talking about goals conceded. Yeah, he was the most conceded. He was the goalkeeper that conceded most. I'm talking about advanced analytics, which for goalkeepers, it matters more than players on the field, because it's far less complex, right? There's less variables to it. And statistically speaking, he was among the worst goalkeepers in Belgium, just to say that.
His expected saves was not great, right?
Well, not just that. Expected shots on target and goals conceded, or expected goals with shots on target conceded. Multiple things. I think even save percentage wasn't very good too. I could double check that as we go, but I just remember, statistically speaking, I don't remember from the top of my head, he was not good in Belgium.
Yeah, and I think that's why nobody wanted him outside of a third division club.
That wants Americans, right? Because they also got Donovan Pines, didn't they?
Right. So they got to, and look, he's young. He may still come through. But what's most worrying to me, and really one of the reasons I'm having him out of here, is Pochettino wants to play out of the back. I don't think Gabriel Slonina is probably worse out of the back than Chris Brady. And Chris Brady's no good. I'd say he's worse than Patrick Schulte out of the back too. He looks so stiff trying to pass out of the back. It's like watching a guy who's, when like some famous athlete plays soccer, and you can tell that they've kind of got athleticism, but zero technique. So it just looks like a 4-year-old. Like, that's kind of what it looks like with Slonina. I'm sorry. And I hoped he would become something, but I can't pretend it's not happening. He hasn't improved in the last 2 years. I'm sorry.
The stat, Pete, that I checked here, that he was among the worst in the league. So people are going to say goals conceded, that can be on the defense being crap. That is 100% true. But he was one of the worst in the league in goals prevented. Goals prevented is the XG minus, the goals that you conceded. essentially. And it was negative, and he was among the worst in the league. Clean sheets, that doesn't matter too much. But overall, like save percentage, he was right at the 50 percentile, so right in the middle of the league. But again, this is the Belgium league. Like if you want a big move, you have to be really standing out in the Belgium league. The only thing Slonina has is in his favor right now is he's very young. And for a goalkeeper, he's 20, I believe, right now, or just turned 20. That is extremely young for a goalkeeper. They usually start, unless you're Donnarumma or some like incredible young player, usually they start to take off when they're 24, 25. It's different from forwards.
Yeah.
So that he has that going for him. But to say he's ready, to say that he's already a great goalkeeper, no. He is about at the level that he is right now, the third division of England.
Yeah. Real quick, guys, because I know some people are going to comment on this. These are the exact slides from back in May. That's why it says Nottingham Forest for Matt Turner or Eupen for Slonina. These are the exact slides from back then. So please don't be like, oh, fake news, Pete. When we do the next slides saying who I'm going to change to is all going to be updated. But these are the old slides because we're referencing back in May. So like I said, I'm going to take out Chris Brady and Gabriel Slonina, and I'm going to replace them with Patrick Schulte and Diego Cochin. And I think Schulte will be 25 and, is doing well. I think there's a good chance he gets a move before then. At least he should, right? Maybe not to a Arsenal. There were some links with Arsenal. Guys, stop. He needs to go to a championship team or an Eredivisie team, maybe a low-level Bundesliga team. But I would say with our goalkeepers, Man City, Stefan and Turner both made the mistake of just going to a super club, and it did not benefit them. So they need to be, our guys leaving need to be realistic about their level first. And then if you're balling out in the Bundesliga and a super team wants you, great, but go somewhere. So anyways, I'm going to have Schulte and I'm going to have Cochin because I do think Cochin is going to fit very ideally with what Pochettino wants. Will he be playing professionally by then? It's hard to say, but my bet is yes, he will at least be on loan to another professional club. And then I have Matt Turner just because I think Pochettino will want to bring one quote-unquote experienced goalkeeper. I also think it's possible that before we get to 2026, Turner will finally be somewhere where he can play, whether that's MLS or the championship or somewhere else. So that's my guess, but it's really no way of knowing. Chris Brady might come through. Slonina might surprise us. Gavin Beavers might be, Julian Eystone, who's at Brentford, might break through for all we know. I doubt it in 2 years. But, Adam Beaudry at the Colorado Rapids, does Pochettino give Stefan another chance? There's so many unknowns.
Tim Howard might take more testosterone, get even more jacked, get in shape, come back from retirement and still start for this team. Yeah, it can happen.
I would take it. And by the way, a 19-year-old came on for Milan in the Champions League yesterday. So it's not completely out of the blue that a 20-year-old could be in our, a 19-year-old goalkeeper, to be clear. It's not completely out of the blue that a 20-year-old could be in our roster. But let's move on to yours, Tac. These were your three.
Okay. So I'm going to keep Matt Turner. I'm going to definitely keep Patrick Schulte. I'm glad I placed him already because I do think he'll be in the roster. I think it's very likely that he'll be in the roster. Whether he'll start or not, that's a different discussion. As long as he's healthy, he should be there. My question is like Ethan Horvath. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if he got benched with Cardiff because he was benched over the weekend when we're recording this. I don't know if he got actually benched.
That could have been international duty problems.
Yeah, I don't rate Ethan Horvath, but it kind of becomes one of those where if Cochin or Slonina start to play at a higher level, I think it's very likely that one of them gets called in. And Ethan Horvath really looks like Adam when we bring him to the channel. Really looks like Adam. I'm going to replace Ethan Horvath with Slonina. I don't think Cochin will break into the squad in time. I think he might get a loan when he's probably around 20. This is his first season with Barcelona B. Like Conrad de la Fuente, I think Conrad stayed there 2 seasons. They don't release the guys too quickly. Maybe Barcelona would just bring him in and put him on the bench too. Like he could just be a backup for them. So I'm going to say Turner, Slonina, and Schulte.
Honestly, with these goalkeepers, your guess is as good as mine. Like anybody in the comments, your guess is as good as ours. We just have no way of knowing. Nobody is the heir apparent. I mean, Cochin is the heir apparent. Is that going to be enough by 2026? We don't know yet. So we'll see. But let's move on from goalkeepers. It's, fullbacks. fullbacks was a fun one. Serginho Dest, Joe Scally, Anthony Robinson, and Christopher Lund. So the top three, would you be surprised? Like, would you be very surprised if the top three are not in there? Dest, Scally, A-Rob?
Those are close to locks as long as they're healthy.
Unless Pochettino likes, I don't know, an attacking fullback in the form of a Brian Reynolds or a Marlon.
Or if Pochettino just sees Dest as a winger, and then it's not that he won't bring Dest, it's just that he won't be in this section.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to try Dest as a winger, to be very honest. I think he's a better winger than Tim Weah.
I don't think that's too crazy. He's better in combination play. He's better to beat his man on a 1v1. He's better with his long shots. He's only worse than Weah in crossing. That's the only thing.
Yes. Yeah, but I think if you're talking about a winger who tucks inside and combines, I would love Pochettino to at least try it. Even if you don't want to do it long term, try it as a experiment.
Wait. So maybe what can change with the roster if something like that happens is you put Dest on the winger section and Weah in the fullback section.
Yeah. Also, or you keep Weah as a backup winger and you just have Scally and Reynolds or Scally and Fossey as your right back. I don't know. But those three, I'm pretty sure they're going to be there. I'm going to make some change on Christopher Lund. I'm going to remove Christopher Lund and I'm going to replace him with Kevin Paredes because I believe that Kevin Paredes could be a good winger, but I think he has a higher ceiling as a left back. And I think in the next 2 years, Wolfsburg will figure that out. And I actually think he would be a very solid left back as a backup, at least, to A-Rob. So I'd take out Lund and I'm putting Paredes in there. Lund also did not really impress me that much in this last camp. And the fact that he's 22 years old and still playing in Serie B, I didn't see anything in this camp that made me go, wow, Lund got. I know some people disagree. They thought he was good. I thought he had one or two good moments in a largely mediocre performances.
No, I didn't see the difference between Lund and like a John Token. I didn't see the difference.
Or Wiley.
Yeah, except for Wiley's like 2 years younger. So
Right. Where these guys are their early 20s. But I think Paredes, also another reason I'm adding Paredes is because even though he played as a winger in the Olympics, he did a lot of really good defensive work against the better teams. And so that, I already sort of thought this toward the end of last season where he played as a wing back / left back a few times for Wolfsburg, but I'm going to add him in there now. And yours were the same.
Yeah, I'm going to remove Christopher Lund. I'm going to throw in Caleb Wiley there as a left back. Not because he's ready right now. He's far from ready right now.
Yeah.
But I think one thing we talked about is I've liked the progress that a player like Gianluca Busio made, for example, staying in Europe for 2-3 years, struggling, all of that. And Wiley is already playing Liga. He has this season and he'll have one more. I think we're going to see Wiley drastically improve. It felt like he stagnated a little bit when he was in MLS, like not for too long, but it just felt like he wasn't progressing. I do think going to Europe, like for example, against Lyon, he got an assist, but he also messed up and led to 2 goals essentially. He'll learn from it. There's more pressure, more accountability. He can get benched. I think Wiley can make a big jump with that sense, and I'm expecting and hoping he's the backup left back.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Let's jump into center backs now. These were my 4. And I'm going to actually put 5 because I remember we have to make 26. So I'm adding my first one here. Austin Trusty, Jalen Neal, Chris Richards, and Cameron Carter-Vickers. So I'm taking out Trusty. For the simple, I had hoped that he would go back to the championship, play more at his level, and continue to demonstrate that at the very least he can be a good championship center back. Instead, he chose to become a backup center back in a worse league just because it was for the best team. And now he's not even playing at all. He's a backup center back at Celtic. Like, are we really going to say he should be there instead of Cameron Carter-Vickers when he's literally a backup to Cameron Carter-Vickers? I mean, he's probably a backup to Scales, to be honest. But I just think that's a terrible trajectory for Austin Trusty. Why would you take a step down and still be on the bench? Like, he could have stayed in the championship and played. So Trusty is out. I have Mark McKenzie there in his place, who went the opposite direction, right? Been in Belgium for a few years now, felt like he was starting to stagnate, and then pushed himself and went to Toulouse and became a starter pretty much right away, and has been actually doing okay. Not outstanding, but I'd say the early signs are promising. So I have Mark McKenzie in there. And then the fifth center back was the tough one because I believed we should add a fifth center back. It was actually your idea. I'm adding Tanner Tessman as the fifth.
Let's start pushing that narrative, man. We're going to get Tanner Tessman will
Full
become
credit to you. You brought this up first, and I actually agree with you on this. I think that he may not have the explosiveness to be a midfielder, but because of his passing range and his height and his size, I think center back will be ideal for him, and there's a chance that Lyon could play him there.
Yeah, it's not just that, like his reading of the game, interceptions, all of that are very center back like. But when you talk about, he can't really turn with the ball into midfield, so that's pretty important playing as a center back. He's also not really good when time and space are compressed, and midfields tend to get overcrowded at times when you're playing a mid block or even when you're in the final third. Because if you're a midfielder, you're gonna have to go up. I just don't think he has the tools to play as a central midfielder at the highest level. He could prove me wrong, and for all I care, I hope he proves me wrong. But I think Tanner Tessman is probably a very good center back. I haven't seen it entirely, but it just the player profile to me is a center back when I see him.
So, like Kevin Paredes, you think his ceiling as a center back is higher than his ceiling as a midfielder?
Very much higher, yes.
So, okay. So those are the five. And, he can, in a pinch, he can play midfield, right? So in a World Cup, if some shit happens, we're very strong in midfield too. So I think if he wants to break in, his best shot is at center back. So those are my five.
And just to add, you can always play with a back three, and he can almost be like a libero. And he can pinch into midfield in possession. And that gives you an extra player with a lot of ability on the ball to contribute. So you could tactically mess around with the team in a way where I'm not saying to build a team around Tanner Tessman, but you can build a team where Tanner Tessman becomes an extra good player on the ball, which if you want to be a team that dominates possession, not against the better teams or weaker teams, Tanner's a good option.
What is the over under that Pochettino will try more than one formation in his tenure?
Oh, more than one? Oh, that's 100%. He'll try more than one,
right?
Yeah,
he's definitely not gonna stick to a 4-3-3 blindly. These were yours. These were your four center backs.
Okay, just to make it clear, fellas, everyone, I put Miles Robinson because Gregg Berhalter was in charge at the time, and we're predicting what Berhalter was going to do.
Right.
Now that Pochettino's in charge, I'm going to slash right away Miles Robinson. I'm going to keep everyone that's there. You did say we can add 3 more players. I will also add a center back. I think that will happen. I want Tanner Tessman to be a center back. I'm just not ready to bet on that. So I'm going to skip on that. I'm going to put Jalen Neal there. And I know many people are saying that in El Tráfico, he really struggled in the first half, right? Especially, I think tactically, LAFC knew how to take advantage of him. And then in the second half,
he was also up against Bouanga, who was probably one of the best attackers in the league.
Well, LAFC is one of the best teams in the league and in general. And he bounced back in the second half. So to bounce back at that age right away, he is very comfortable on the ball. Yeah, he's not perfect when it comes to positioning and sometimes really bad in isolation, even though he's fairly fast. Like he has speed. But I think he'll adjust to that. Like I said in the past, like center backs also take a while to mature. Like Chris Richards, for example, he's 24 and he's only really getting like his mojo in the Premier League. Like he started like last season when he was 24. Like it takes time for center backs, unless you're like world-class prospects and all that when it's like 20 or something. So I'm going to put Jalen Neal. So that's McKenzie, Richards, Carter-Vickers, Jalen Neal, and who was I going to put again? Now I forgot the name. I don't know if you're going to like this, Pete. I don't know if you're going to
say Walker Zimmerman.
No, I think there is a very strong possibility that Tim Ream makes the roster.
Ooh, interesting. Why?
I don't think he'll play under Pochettino, but I think he can see him as a veteran presence. And again, he is not really just a vibes guy. He is actually and try to understand what my train of thought here. Pochettino, one of the big struggles he's going to have with this team is essentially like a leader, like a true leader. And probably Tim Ream is the biggest leader this team has. Is he enough? No. Remove him from there and you don't have anyone else. I think the fifth center back would probably be Tim Ream. Most likely won't play, but he'll be there with the team and as an option because he'll be playing till 2026 in MLS. He's not retiring before that. And He'll do fine in MLS. Like, we know Tim Ream will do fine in
Yeah,
MLS.
he'll be fine in MLS, I guess, as the 5th center back. Here's the thing. There's a good chance Pochettino stays past 2026. All of the chirping from U.S. Soccer has been that he sees this as a long-term project, but he himself said, no one's going to want me after 2026 if I fail. So let me get going to 2026 first. And then it seems to hear them talk, I don't know if this is true, but to listen to JT Batson talk, it sounds like he is he thinks the long-term potential is much better than just 2026. And he might be interested in staying long-term. So is there a chance he brings a 5th center back who's actually young and not ready, but he wants him to have that experience because he knows he's going to be there in 2026?
I mean,
Like
I would argue that.
Kai Banks or a Arnie Chase.
Well, Arnie Chase, we're going to lose him regardless.
Are we?
Yeah, probably.
How do we know? To Germany or to Japan?
Japan, most likely.
But if Pochettino comes and talks to you, do you at least pay attention?
Hopefully. I want to remain hopeful of that. But look, in terms of young center backs, Carter-Vickers will be 28 in 2026. Chris Richards will be 25. Jalen Neal will be like 22, 23. Mackenzie will be 27. These are all center backs that have at least one more World Cup. Maybe two.
They're all in their prime.
Yeah. So again, I don't see the need of bringing a young center back unless he's really standing out or recruitment. That's the only.
But that young center back might have higher potential than all of these guys. And so you bring him because you think, I want him to have this experience going into 2030. Because the 5th center back doesn't matter that much at a 26-man roster, right?
Yeah, there's a possibility that he could do that. I thought Berhalter should have done that with a few guys for 2022.
No, you had to have Shaq Moore attack.
Yeah, I thought like Johnny Tillman and Pepe could have gained World Cup experience, but he chose Jesus Ferreira, chose Jordan Morris, chose Shaquille Moore, chose Kellen Acosta, guys that don't contribute.
Christian Roldan.
But I'm going to go Mackenzie Richards, Carter-Vickers, Jalen Neal as the youngest one, and then I think Tim Ream could make the roster. Yeah, I'm going to put him there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move now into midfielders. And obviously, I'm going to have to add here.
Yeah.
These were my 6. Gio, Weston, Yunus Musa, Malik Tillman, Tyler Adams, and Johnny Cardoso. Obviously, I'm actually going to add 2 guys here. Wait a minute. Yeah, I'm going to add 2 guys here.
But then you can't add any more.
No, I know. Well, yeah. Okay, let me start with one guy for sure. I'm going to actually add Gianluca Busio because I've actually been impressed with what he did in the Olympics this summer. It wasn't outstanding, but he looked quite good. And early signs with Venezia is that he bulked up over the course of the summer. And he's always been a technical-ish player. His issues were that he would get bullied off the ball and he was quite passive. Those were his 2 issues. He's looking, it's very early, so I want to be cautiously optimistic, but he's looking like he belongs in Serie A, the early days with Venezia. And with Gio's injury history, I don't think it can hurt to have another guy who can play as a 10, who can play as an 8. And he's not getting pushed off the ball. He still has his technical ability, his playmaking ability. I'm going to add Gianluca Busio here. I will keep it to 1. I was going to add 1 more, but I've changed my mind about that because there's another one I want to add on another position. So I'm going to keep these 6. No changes here. And then I add Gianluca Busio.
Yeah, this midfield here, I don't have any player that I would replace right now. I think they all should be able to make the Pochettino's roster. And I think I have the same picks as you, don't I? Can I check?
Let's have a look.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I would assume those will be the guys that will be with Pochettino in 2026. I do want to add 1, which I think is very likely to happen because this guy is a bit versatile. He runs a lot, playing in the Bundesliga. I think Leonard Maloney will be my addition instead of Busio. I can see that with Busio too. He looks like he belongs in the Serie A. Venezia, not so much though. So we'll see how that one goes.
So you already have 2 defensive midfielders, right? You have Johnny and you have
Tyler
Adams.
Yeah, but I still think you'll bring that because then you also have, like, in terms of playing the 10 position or playmaking position, you have Malik Tillman, Gio Reyna. I don't like that, but even McKennie, we've seen him play very high up the field. He gives you goals. And Pulisic can play the 10 too, and Pulisic is definitely going to be in our roster. I think he's going to bring maybe Maloney that can play center back, can play CDM, can play left back if you need. And Maloney also runs a lot and can press, which is what he likes. Plus, you talked about Gio's injury history. Let's talk about Tyler's too. Like, he could go to the World Cup and not be fully fit. Now, if it's the World Cup and Tyler Adams can play 45 minutes, I would still bring him, but he won't be able to start for you. So having
especially
Maloney
if it's a 26-man roster.
Exactly. So you have Maloney and Johnny that can both play the 6-2. And if Tyler comes in half fit for 2026, if the injury re-aggravates and he can't play, you still need like 2 reliable 6s. And then you have Johnny and you have Maloney. Maloney also plays a lot in double pivot. And if we were to bet, Pochettino will probably have a double pivot. At least at some point he'll try it. So
I can see it. I mean, we have not an embarrassment of riches because it's still lacking real world-class quality. But it's obviously the position in our pool where we're most comfortable. We're most comfortable with the options. Let's go into wide forwards here. And this is where I'm adding my 4th one. I have Christian Pulisic, Timothy Weah, and Haji Wright as the wingers, mostly because of a lack of alternative options. And then it's going to be one of 2 players. My safe gut instinct says Brendan Aronson, because even though Brendan Aronson is not a very technical player, he does one thing that Pochettino likes, and that's run. Dude will press all day long if you ask him to. He might not even be effective with his pressing, but he will press. But I'm going to go with the aspirational choice and say that Luca Koleosho gets recruited by Poch and he becomes the 4th winger in this team.
He can also press, by the way.
He can also press. And I think he offers a little more going forward than Brendan Aronson does. Not much more, but more. And I'll say this, Italy, for everyone saying that, he should start over Tim Weah, let's pump the brakes. Italy didn't even think he was good enough for their under-21s. He wasn't even on the bench for their last under-21 game. So let's all pump the brakes. I think he could be an interesting depth piece for the roster and maybe help challenge some of these winger spots. But I don't think Koleosho is worthy of some of the hype he's been getting.
No, he's a good player that can add depth. I think he's a player that raises our floor. That's about it. Because I watched him in the Premier League last season for Burnley, and then he got injured, a bad knee injury. Not terrible, but a bad knee injury kept him out for months. And I've been watching a little bit of Burnley this season. I even watched, like, when we're recording this, I watched him play against Leeds. He even scored the game that I watched. But he was very mediocre throughout the game. Like, couldn't really take on defenders on his own. A lot of the times when he blows by a defender, it's on a hustle play. Like, he out fights them, out scraps them. He definitely has good dribbling ability in open space. That's where the goal came from. He can finish. He has scored a few goals here and there when his finishing is fine, but still very much one-dimensional player, to say the least. And I think he's a must recruit, though. I do think he raises our floor, and that's actually very important. But it's not like this guy. He is levels and levels below a Christian Pulisic, and I would argue he's actually levels below Tim Weah, and I would probably prefer even Dest on the wing over him. But he is a player that can very easily, right now, Koleosho, fight for that 4th winger spot, or even 3rd, 4th, more like 4th winger spot in our roster.
These were yours.
Okay. I think I'm going to keep that.
Okay. You always go with the safe choices, no?
Yeah, I mean, this was based on Berhalter, to be fair, and right. I do think in terms of selection, this will be it. I will add one thing here. I can still add one player. I already had 4 wingers. You added your 4th now, so I could go on and throw Koleosho. I'm gonna keep him out for now because who knows what's going to go on. Pochettino might not even. He's also one of those guys, Koleosho, that I even recorded a video that I'm going to release this week. That what bothers me a little bit about Koleosho is that it doesn't feel like he wants to play for the country he wants to play. I feel like he's just testing everything and trying to figure out what's best for his career, which I totally get. A lot of players make that decision based on their career. But very often when they make that decision, it's usually like a Mexican-American that's literally torn between both. He's like torn between both. And he's just like, well, since I like both, I'm going to pick the one that's better for my career. And I get that. And it's fair. Koleosho is just kind of like, I'm sorry, like little to no connection with Italy. From what I heard, he doesn't speak Italian at all. He like grew up in Connecticut until he was like 12.
He also went to a Canada camp.
Yeah, went to a Canada camp and then
and left before the camp was over.
Well, and just so people know, like even when I had him on my channel in 2022, just a little story here that anyone that made it this far in the video, hey, you guys are going to hear this story for the first time. The reason he came to my channel was because his dad reached out. So his dad wanted people to know about him. At the time, he was in the Espanol Academy. And I'm always for giving young prospects my platform to like, hey guys, this guy exists. And that's why I brought him. But when we were talking in the interview, the way it went, I kind of got the feeling that not that I was being used, because for me it's content, so it's a win for me. And he's a very talented player, but it felt like more his dad. That's where Canada found out about him, by the way. It was through my interview. That's how Canada found out about Koleosho.
Did they have a drone over your house watching the interview?
They might have a few drones here and there. They might have, but it was through that interview, and it felt like his dad just wanted to talk about all the passports that he had. Like this dude is like collecting passports as if they're freaking like Pokemon cards, and just like Nigeria, Italy, Canada, US. It's like, dude, just like, are you really that connected to all these countries? It's not the truth, right? Like, and he also, by the way, he spent a lot of his teenage years in Europe, but it wasn't in Italy. It was in Spain,
right?
Which he does. So that's what bothers me a little about Koleosho. It doesn't feel like I don't know, like that.
Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with Koleosho. One thing's for sure, I don't think Poch is going to tolerate any low commitment players. So I think if you want to play for the US, you're going to have to show you want to play for the US. These are my 3 last time, and I'm going to keep them the same.
Yeah, I think mine are the same because that was where I bought. Well, actually, I'm going to have to add one. I'm adding Sargent.
You have to add a striker. You're adding Sargent.
Sargent. Yeah, I'll add Sargent. As long as his ankles let him play, he'll be there.
Yeah, dude is like he's not even that injury prone, but it's such the worst timing. Like right as he goes into camp, they get injured, or right before camp, they get injured. So I don't know. Dude. Like it's a weird one with Sargent. Hopefully he can figure it out. There's nobody pushing. There's nobody pushing this squad of 3. Like Damian Downs is in the 2nd division of Germany. Okay. Brandon Vasquez,
P-Fuck is like in and out of the lineup in Union Berlin.
Yeah, there's no one pushing these 3. So could Cairo Figueroa break through somewhere? Maybe, but even then, it's too soon. It's too soon.
I think that, yeah, if we were to make like center forward tiers, these guys will be in the first tier. Well, probably I'll put like Balogun and a Sargent in tier 1 for the US, and then Pepe tier 2 alone with no one else. And then tier 3 comes everyone else, the guys you mentioned.
So, guys, this is our... Oh, by the one more thing. Speaking of CBS, we forgot to replace Gio Reyna in the roster with Lucho Acosta. That's the latest propaganda piece that's being churned out, that we need to remove the 21-year-old who's finished. He's past it. He's 21. It's over. And we should bring in a 30-year-old instead, because that's the guy that's really going to take us to the next heights, the MLS guy. So that's an interesting piece being churned out by CBS this week. So
yeah, agenda's getting pushed. But yeah, look, and we don't have any issues with Acosta. He's a good MLS player, but you have Gio Reyna, you have Malik Tillman, you mentioned Gianluca Busio. God, McKinney can play higher up the field too, and he's not going to be
play there.
Pulisic can play there. There's no reason to call a player that, like, I'm sorry, like it doesn't, like, he's just getting the citizenship and you just hand him a call up and he's playing MLS. Why isn't Lucho Acosta playing in a better league? Oh, because he can make more money in MLS. Good for him. That's his choice. That's his choice.
Yeah, we need to get over this MLS lifer thing very quickly. M-Rob, Walker. Jesus needs to leave soon, but I mean, he's going to be 24 in December. So
Pete, Jesus should stay in MLS. That's about his level. He'll make good money. I think he's fine where he is.
It's funny how there's always teams that are just about to sign him, but it always seems to fall through at the very end, because it was that Russian team, right?
It's always at the end of the window. They have like Tom Bogert release a piece.
It's after the window is closed. They're like, this was going to happen. That's how valuable this guy is. First, it was Russia, and then who was the Spanish team?
Wasn't it Cardis or something? I don't know. Palmas?
Yeah, it was Las Palmas.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it was Las Palmas. Anyways, again, it was like the dude is also like pushing 24. This is not a young player anymore. And he hasn't actually been that great in MLS this season either. So I don't really understand it. But guys, this is our completely uneducated, speculative Pochettino 2026 roster. Let us know in the comments below who you think he's going to bring. And I guess we'll find out soon.